Usually, you cannot kill what you cannot see. But today, the enemy sees everything through lenses, heat, and data. So your job is to become invisible again. Understanding your signature from the enemy's perspective will vastly increase your unit's survivability.
I'm the old man.
And I'm Lost LT 1775, an infantry officer and captain in the Marine Corps. Welcome to Lost LT's Razor, where the fight, the leader, and the lessons learned all matter. A squad holds a perimeter at the edge of a ruined suburb. They've got mylar blankets covering their positions, decoy antennas in an open ground behind them, and a drone passes overhead, absolutely deceived. Squad simply use discipline and deception. Proliferation of C-sUAS across the battlefield further emphasizes the need for sound fieldcraft TTPs to avoid detection and create deception. All right, welcome back everyone to part 2 of this series, episode 8. Today we're really focusing on some of the TTPs and kind of defining what a few immediate action drills could be. So first up, really just want to go through some of the detection and early warning capabilities. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about is something that I've heard people talk through a lot, but training your Marines to identify the sound of a drone. And really that's operating in kind of the acoustic realm. So I think over time, and I wonder if you have thoughts on this, but was there ever a time in Iraq or Afghanistan that you could hear the incoming buzz or pitch or whine of a certain type of round, the crack, and where you were immediately able to identify what that munition was that was coming at you?
Day 1, morning 1 in Iraq. I'm in the shower after long transit, and all of a sudden, as I'm showering, my butt is up in the air, and I'm upside down because of a percussion sound wave of an incoming rocket or mortar. So there is a signature, and it takes a while to get used to it. So when you're talking about detection tools, you're not necessarily talking about mortars and rockets like I faced in Iraq. You're talking about drones.
Absolutely. And I think the concept remains the same. And maybe for you, the next time that you heard a similar percussion wave or similar impact kind of incoming, you probably were able to brace a little bit earlier.
Oh, yeah, I got down.
Yeah. So that's the goal, and that's the end state with this idea is we need to train our Marines to identify the sounds of different drones so that you don't have to then look up and show your heat source, aka your face, to a drone that's looking at you. If you have a hat or a boonie cover on your head, maybe your thermal signature is covered to some extent, but as soon as you hear a buzzing sound and your first instinct is to look up, guess what? Now you've just shown exactly where your position was. So we need to train our ears to identify the sounds of the drones and really use that as, we say the term LPOP is something that we should push out. I'm not sure if you've heard that before, a listening post, observation post. And so I'm going to send out a small buddy pair or maybe fire team group of 4 individuals that are going to go sit somewhere, and their mission is to listen and observe. If I now tell them, hey, make sure you're listening for drones, and based on their experience over time and how much these drones are integrated into training, they can very quickly identify the type of drone that's in front of them. So depending on if it's a quadcopter flying over you, that sounds different than a fixed-wing drone. Depending on if it's a FPV that is what you assume to be armed coming at you, that's going to sound a little bit different too. And so that's all I'm trying to get at here is we need to train to and understand the differences in the sound that these drones make, and then make sure our Marines and our teams fully understand that so that they can just identify and provide some form of an ADRAC that much quicker.
Oh man, Lost LTs, please tell me in training you're sending both 3, 4, 5, 6 different things over their heads.
Yes, it's And again, I mean, this is one of those things that you can start doing tomorrow. I understand that depending on the unit, you have limited capabilities in how many drones you have, blah, blah, blah. Whatever your complaint is, sorry, figure it out. Begin to train with these things as soon as possible and make sure that you get yourself and your team intimately familiar. I think it goes a step further, though, we've talked about what are some other ways that we can detect an early warning? So we can hear the drone. What else can we do? We can look and identify it with our beautiful eyeballs. Optical observation is critical, and just using your eyes or using the optics that you have with you. Using other drones, there's a litany of things that you can use, but we need to have some form of optical observation that can detect and provide early warning. And so when I think optical, I think assigning essentially a drone or aerial observation team that has some form of a sector, whether 360 degrees, if I'm patrolling, we can assign numbers on the clock and say, hey, you've got from 11 to 1, you've got 1 to 3, you've got 3, so on and so forth. And they're searching and doing kind of normal scanning patterns to practice their ability to visual AID a drone. And easier said than done, but again, if you have a platoon or a squad, we're not asking for everyone to take their eyes off of the fight and look up, or take their, like if you're patrolling, you're not taking contact. We just need to have someone looking up in the air. That's all we're getting at there.
Lost LT, are you telling me that in a squad, 12, 15, 20 guys, dudes out there in a field, that you're relying on 20 sets of ears, or is there a piece of equipment that can do some of this too?
Yeah, there is, but I'm hesitant to talk too much about.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, no, not because it's classified or whatever. If there's anything, I wouldn't even be talking about it anyways. But the reason that I'm hesitant to talk about some of the technology is because it's not things that every rifle squad in the Marine Corps has, and I just have a pet peeve of talking conceptual things like with that. But one thing that I think is right now not at every squad, but it should be, is a handheld RF scanner. And so I think to your point, that's one thing that, I mean, shoot, you could go on Amazon and buy an adapter and buy a RF scanner for like less than $50 that will, in layman's terms, essentially detect radio frequencies of emissions of things that are around you. And so a simple handheld tool like that, just think of it as like you're holding this thing that when it observes an indicator that there's an indication, a warning of some type of drone operating on a certain frequency, then all of a sudden it flashes a light for you. Guess what? That's early warning. That's all we're saying there. And I think that is something that would actually be very useful. And I hope that the NATO and the Department of War are kind of looking at that.
Does an RF scanner send out a signature?
I think it absolutely does. I don't know. That's a great question, though. I don't know how much of a signal it actually pushes out, but I would be hard pressed to think it doesn't have a signature.
Something, yeah. So when you look at all these detection tools, is there something that's better than others? I mean, what do you tell that young lieutenant that's got the young squad? What's best? What is better?
I don't know if I would say that there's one specific item that is the best or like the most preferred thing to look at. I would say that it's a combination. I keep coming back to this idea of when I think detection and early warning, it needs to be layered. We cannot just have one ring of defense and expect that it's going to work. I don't care if it's the Iron Dome and you think you have the most effective defense. There needs to be, think more bubbles and more layers and depth in your defense. So detection and early warning can look like acoustic, optical, RF scanner. It can look like a combination of kinetic and non-kinetic effects of like, and again, I'm hesitant to talk too much about it, but there's this thing called the SMASH FCS. It is a kinetic weapon system that can be used to shoot drones down. You can use, we've seen machine guns get used, we've seen rifles get used, we've seen shotguns get used as kinetic effects, some with more effectiveness than others. But essentially, the key thing is whatever you can get your hands on at the platoon or tactical like squad level. We need to find ways to overlap and layer those things to make it more of a deliberate defense in depth is kind of what I look like, and protecting your position.
Now, when you talk about detection, that sounds offense to me. Let's talk defense. Decoys. What do we do?
Yeah, we alluded to this, and if you didn't have a chance to listen to last episode, pause right here and go back and then listen to that one first. But when I think of deception, I absolutely love the word deception, and I think it is heavily underused in modern combat. And I could just be saying that and having nothing to back it up, but that's just what I feel, is that we don't really use deception as much. And honestly, I mean, I understand also it's probably pretty hard to achieve true deception. When I think about creating surprise on the enemy, I think absolute surprise and relative surprise. Relative surprise is pretty easy to achieve. You just got to catch them off guard. But absolute surprise is they had no idea that you were coming. I mean, you totally caught them off guard. I would say in the age of technology and information that we have today, absolute surprise is pretty hard to achieve. So I go to deception. And now when I'm thinking deception, to me, to combat drones and their effectiveness, you create a signature that's so juicy and that looks like such a good target that a drone operator sees that and just has to assign a shooter to that position, essentially. And so, a few small things that you can do is, we mentioned it last episode, but using MRE heaters, using hand warmers. You can boil water, put it in a thermos or a Nalgene or something, throw it in the bottom of a main pack or a sleeping system. All we're trying to do here is create a juicy target in a juicy position that might be able to fool maybe a lesser trained operator. I'd say the more trained the operator is, the harder it is to truly deceive them, because the more sets and reps that they've seen. But I mean, you can get to the detail of throwing antennas. You can loosen dirt around a fighting position. You can put trash around there. I mean, make it look like it's an occupied position. If you're in the defense, for example, maybe if you're in a patrol base, you can do something similar and set up radios and some sort of antenna looking thing, as well as a heat source just away from your position. All you're trying to do is throw them off your position. And so I'd say the basics and the fundamentals of camouflage and concealment, you know what those are, and so just figure out ways to confuse an enemy and their sensor.
So you say all you're trying to do is throw them off your position. Is that it? Is that the end of the game? Or can you use a decoy and them chasing a decoy to turn that into some kind of offensive advantage? I
think you can turn it into an offensive advantage, and it largely depends on what the enemy does. Sure. But depending on if they send a drone to go observe your position, and you trace and track that drone as it then goes back to their friendly position, that's one method, right? I mean, you can send your drone up to track that drone back to wherever it lands at, and then call for fire on that position. Maybe the enemy wants to assign a squad patrol to go further check out that location, and you could have some sort of a hasty ambush in place on that decoy position. So I mean, I think you can think outside the box and get creative with it, but I do think that we would make a lot of money if we continue to hammer home and really get practice at decoy positions. Anytime you go out to the field in a training environment and you've got a red cell, okay, like a fake enemy force that's out there, you should get sets and reps and not even tell the enemy. I think if you can truly make this as realistic as possible and make both sides feel the pain based on their decision or indecision, I think that, like, if you don't do that, you're going to eventually do it. It's just a matter of whether you're going to lose lives in combat before you decide to make this change and just build this into your TTPs.
Lost LT, old man is a comms guy. PAO, anything that's comms. I fight with a pen and a camera. One of the things that worries me about all of these signatures that you're talking about in the battlefield is, don't you basically have to shut down comms? Aren't you going to give your positions away?
Yeah, it's easier said than done, but it's one of these things that we've been talking about for so long and already been kind of building into our TTP. So, comm windows have already been a TTP that I think is just like standard at this point. But now it'll definitely get you killed, or it's more likely to get you killed if you don't actually do it. So I think comm windows are one, but I would argue that basic fundamental knowledge is something that I would say like RF theory or IR theory. We talked ad nauseum last episode about infrared and thermal optics and cameras. I think, and how your position can be exposed by that. I think we need to have the same conversation with radio frequencies and comm windows and just understanding, like defining some of these terms. So to your point where we talk about how do you keep comms effective while minimizing signatures, I think step one is to schedule comm windows, incorporate brevity codes to lessen the time that you're holding that push to talk down and talking. Use, like the standard should be using low power and directional antennas wherever possible. That's all very basic, like day one information that I know all of you already understand. But for those that don't know, I just want to level set. RF is the radio waves that essentially carry your control link, your video downlink, and comms. Drones, most Group 1 C-sUAS, which are the smaller kind of quadcopters and smaller fixed-wing assets, like think under 20 to 30 pounds, they need what's called line of sight. And so your environment, whether it's hills, buildings, thick canopy from trees, that the environment that's around you can block or reflect some of those signals. So when you think line of sight, if there's a dense urban environment in between you and where you're trying to fly, you might lose signal. If there's a really thick forest that you're operating in, you'll definitely lose signal. Same thing with hills, et cetera, right? So you need to plan launch sites. If you're a drone operator or a commander that's employing these, you need to plan your launch sites accordingly, depending on the environment that you're operating in. You should expect, furthermore, that jamming is on the battlefield and that the enemy is going to be trying to battle, or they're going to be trying to pinpoint where you are using EW capabilities to find your radio frequencies and find your signature. And so you need to have a pre-planned alternate set of frequencies, like lost link plan for your drone. You need to have alternate frequencies that you can go on with respect to regular comms. Last thing I'll say about comms and comm windows is just understand the frequency and power. I'm a dumb infantry individual myself, but what I need everyone to understand in the infantry is like the very basic employments of frequency and power. So the higher the power that your radio is on, the longer range you have to talk to someone, but the larger your signature is going to be. So I'll say that again. If you have your radio on high power, you're able to talk further, but you make a lot larger of a signature. On the flip side, if you have your radio on low power, then you can talk a little bit shorter of a range, but you have a lot smaller of a signature that's a lot harder to detect. So just understanding those very basic, simple things about radio frequencies and RF theory, if you will, might hopefully help keep you alive. So,
would it be a good idea to turn your Garmin off as well?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I wish Garmin would sponsor this podcast, but they probably won't. But I do love my Garmin watch, and I love wearing it. But I tell you what, if I were to go to war tomorrow, I'm putting on like my old Timex, and I'm not bringing the Garmin with me. And I hope that everyone would do the same. So if you don't have basic TTPs and like basic things like land nav and whatever individual capabilities and critical requirements hammered down without the aid of technology, then you're wrong.
All right, level set me, Lost LT. There's a drone overhead. What do we do?
There was a kind of symposium that I went to a few weeks ago where we had this conversation at length, and I'm trying to still think through how I want to have this conversation, even after having a few weeks to sit on it. the back and forth dialogue was that it's so subjective to the type of drone that you're up against. That's why I think this idea of detection and early warning is so critical, because it buys you precious time and space to react to the drone. So if a drone is overhead, step one is to identify what the type of drone is, because that means vastly different things in what that drone is about to do to you. It could just be looking with no other intention other than to collect information in the sort of like PIR, if you will, priority information requirements for a recon patrol. It's just going out and trying to identify information. It could also be looking for targets of opportunity to call for fire on. So, I mean, depending on the platform that you're looking at, there's a totally different reaction. So, and one other thing I would add is we talked a little bit the other episode about loitering munitions, FPVs, etc. If you have an FPV, that thing is probably flying low and fast and directly at you. That looks a little bit different than a drone that's 500 feet up in the air and hovering away from you. So what we do know is an ad rack. Every Marine understands what an ad rack is. That's one of the first basic things of you take contact or you see an enemy squad in front of you, you're going to alert your team to them. You're going to provide direction, distance, assignment and control, right? Range as well, sorry. So we know that if we take that same format and we kind of make a modified ad rack, if you will, of finding an enemy drone ahead of you. So take the same idea of the ad rack, and I now say alert. Okay, I'm going to alert the team to the drone that's ahead of me. I'm going to provide them the direction. I'm going to provide them the elevation, and then a basic assignment and control. So something that could sound like is drone, 2 o'clock, 45 degrees. If you have a kinetic weapon system with you, then okay, hey, smash FCS, engage. Or if not, hey, take cover, right? Like that's the call out. So step one, identify the type of drone. If it's an FPV drone, 2 o'clock, low and fast from 30 degrees approaching my position, find cover as quick as possible, something like that. The onus is on the squad leader and the platoon commander to just absolutely hammer these battle drills and these immediate action drills home, so that as soon as you identify, maybe via a brevity code of what that type of drone is, you call that drone out, and then everyone in your team already knows what the reaction is. I don't know if that makes sense to you or if you have any follow-on questions from that.
No, we're recording this October of 2025. We know, open source anyway, that our Marines are not engaged right now, open source. Where our SEALs are and our special operators are is another question altogether. But whatever the next conflict is, and there will be a next conflict, drones are going to play a massive part. How do you change the United States Marine Corps culture to get ready for this?
Well, if I had a beautifully perfect answer for that, they might give me a quick promotion. But I would offer my 2 cents from the cheap seats to Monday morning quarterback this thing. I think that my common theme is just you can't be the only one rowing the boat for it to go very far, very fast. I mean, you can't do it by yourself. It has to be a team effort. And the commander and their ability to create a culture where it's okay to like nerd out a little bit and learn about C-sUAS and learn about thermal crossover and like things like that. Like that is the job of you, and just by you listening to this podcast shows that you're dedicated to the profession of arms and learning and increasing your survivability and lethality at your unit. So, I mean, step one is already being done, but this needs to be a joint effort. It can't, I mean, yes, it starts with the individual, and I think that that's where it should absolutely stem from, but you need higher level enlisted and officers to also continue to encourage decentralized decision making and initiative. And so I think regardless of where you are in a chain of command, to just open up the floodgates and force this concept, not because we're terrified of it or we're underestimating or overestimating it. We just need to train to be comfortable being uncomfortable in every situation that we can possibly encounter. This is just one other area that we can't get caught flat-footed in. So commanders need to inspect what they expect. It's basic stuff that we've already hammered home into every single person. Small unit leaders can't make faulty assumptions. Squad leaders can't expect that their Marines are doing this research on their own. You need to pull your squad in and talk through individual TTPs, develop SOPs. Don't wait for someone to hand feed or spoon feed you the answers. Find a problem and fix it. And that is what makes the Marine Corps and the U.S. so great, is that we're able to quickly slew our sensors and go violently attack a problem once it's been thrown on our plate. And guess what? This one's on our plate and we need to figure it out.
Lost LT, there are other Lost LTs as we close that have finished TBS. They have finished IOC, and those young men and women are now heading to the fleet. What's the one thing they need to know from this episode?
I just come back to this idea of why I felt it was so important to do 2 episodes on passive counter C-sUAS TTPs. I mean, signature management, fieldcraft, camouflage, these are things that need to be second nature within your Marines. And you had the opportunity to go to the best schools that the Marine Corps has to offer, being TBS and IOC. And I truly believe that the character, the competence, the confidence, the school textbook answers, if you will, of what right looks like have all been given to you. And you know what the problem is. You just need to encourage and lean on your NCOs and your small unit leaders to attack this problem together. You need to hammer home dispersion, the basics of visual and thermal camouflage that we've already talked about. You know, things like color, outline, the texture and shine of the optics and the windshields that you're operating with. I also think pattern, the regularity, observing things that don't fit in nature. So box shapes, everything from that to like sudden motion and movements. We know principle of the PB is we don't have every single Marine in our platoon stand up at once. That's a large signature. It's sudden movements. You know, I mean, just basic things like that. We spend a lot of time on the heat and thermal. We can't make faulty assumptions in our Marines and their understanding of that. I think also the last thing I would close on is the physical protection aspect of things and thinking outside of the box. I think back to, again, my last deployment where I'm really concerned with what tools we truly had to defend against drones at the company, platoon, or squad level. And we're making a lot of assumptions of relying and hoping that we're going to get technology. We talked about this the other day, but hope is not a good COA. And I hate when we fall back on hope as a COA and we just hope that it's going to work out and we're going to trust that hire's got our back. It's like, okay, cool, but that's a horrible way of doing business. And we need commanders to think outside the box. We need NCOs to think outside the box. Go get a thing of fishing line and string it up to the building that you're in, and maybe it'll tangle the propeller of a drone, right? I mean, something simple like that you might laugh at. We see that working to a certain extent in Ukraine. We see ground resupply routes, long highways and roads that are literally, they have a net draped over top of it, and it goes for miles and miles so that they can resupply troops, they can move ammunition and logistics along ground resupply routes, essentially. And like, you know, it's just simple things like that. The enemy is going to make some capability appear. We're going to find a way to adapt. We're going to do the same thing to the enemy, and they're going to find a way to adapt. We can't get caught flat-footed, and it's on the commanders and the NCOs to figure it out and not wait to be told what to do.
Folks, you've been listening to Lost LT's Razor with Lost LT and the Old Man. Join us again next week for another episode on wherever you get your podcasts. Lost LT fires a new podcast episode downrange every Tuesday. Make sure to follow the Lost LT's Razor on Spotify and Instagram so you get the weekly reminders. So until next time, Semper Fi.
All right.